That night was supposed to be one of the happiest evenings of my life. I had been planning a simple barbecue gathering for weeks, inviting close friends, family, and a few neighbors to enjoy good food, laughter, and each other's company. The smell of grilled meat, the sound of kids playing in the yard, and the cheerful chatter of people I care about filled the air. I felt proud. Proud of my home, proud of the warm atmosphere, and proud to have my wife by my side. I had no idea how quickly that pride would be ripped away. The barbecue was meant to be a celebration of togetherness, a reminder of how blessed I was to have people around me. But instead, it turned into the night my entire world collapsed in front of dozens of eyes. What I thought was just a friendly, cheerful evening became a stage for betrayal, humiliation, and the kind of pain you cannot forget. Looking back, I realized there were small signs I ignored, moments that should have made me question things sooner. But trust is blinding. You want to believe the person beside you would never cut so deep, especially not where everyone else could see it. I never imagined that in the middle of laughter and clinking glasses, my wife's darkest secret would be dragged into the light by the very man I trusted as a neighbor. What was supposed to be a joyful night became a nightmare, one that revealed the truth about my marriage and left me questioning everything I thought I knew. The day of the barbecue started out picture perfect. The sky was clear, the sun warm but not overwhelming, and the backyard smelled of freshly cut grass. I set up the grill early, arranging tables and chairs in neat rows, stringing up a few lights to make the evening glow once the sun dipped. It was the kind of setting I had always wanted. Family and friends gathered in my own space, with laughter filling the air and food being passed around. My wife seemed cheerful as she moved about the yard, carrying plates and drinks, smiling at the guests as they arrived. She wore her favorite summer dress, light and breezy, the kind that always made her stand out in a crowd. To anyone watching, she looked like the perfect hostess, the perfect partner. And for a while, I believed it too. The guests trickled in one by one, neighbors, close friends, a few cousins. Music played softly from a speaker. Kids ran through the sprinklers, and the clatter of glasses and friendly chatter made the house feel alive. It was exactly the atmosphere I had hoped for. Among the guests was our next-door neighbor. He came with his usual wide smile and easy jokes, the kind that made people laugh effortlessly. He offered to help with the grill, insisting he was good at flipping burgers. At first, I thought nothing of it. It felt normal, friendly even. After all, he was someone I trusted enough to wave to every morning and borrow tools from. But as the evening unfolded, I noticed something subtle, his eyes lingering on my wife a little longer than they should, the way he leaned close when he spoke to her, the quick smiles they exchanged as though they shared some private joke. It was small enough to dismiss, yet nagging enough to plant a seed of unease inside me. Still, surrounded by laughter and conversation, I pushed those thoughts aside. I had worked too hard for this night to let paranoia ruin it. Or at least, that's what I told myself. If I'm honest with myself, the red flags had been there long before the barbecue. At first, they were small things I brushed off, little details that seemed harmless, easy to excuse. But looking back, I see how they were pieces of a puzzle I refused to put together. It began with her phone. She started keeping it closer than before, setting it face down on the table, carrying it into the bathroom, even sleeping with it tucked under her pillow. When I casually asked who she was texting late at night, she'd smile and say, "Just a friend," or "It's nothing important." I wanted to believe her, so I did. Then there were her sudden errands. She would head out for groceries and return 2 hours later with only a small bag in her hand. When I asked why she took so long, she'd laugh it off, claiming she bumped into someone or got distracted. I told myself not to be controlling, that she deserved her space. Even in our marriage, I noticed the distance growing. She was often too tired, too distracted, or too busy to spend time with me. Nights that used to be filled with laughter and closeness became evenings of silence, her eyes glued to her phone or wandering elsewhere. At the barbecue, those same patterns revealed themselves more clearly. I caught her and the neighbor whispering by the cooler, their shoulders brushing as they leaned in too close. When I approached, they quickly pulled apart and pretended to focus on the drinks. Later, I noticed them slipping away together to check on the grill, though I had just been there moments before. My stomach tightened with unease, but I pushed the thoughts down. I told myself it was my imagination, that I was overthinking. After all, this was supposed to be a night of celebration. I didn't want to ruin it with accusations. But deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that something was wrong. I just wasn't ready to listen, at least, not yet. The party carried on with all the usual signs of joy and togetherness. Laughter echoed to the yard. Glasses clinked, and the smell of grilled meat filled the air. Kids chased each other through the sprinklers, their squeals blending with the upbeat music playing from the speakers. On the surface, everything looked perfect, like one of those summer evenings you wish could last forever. I kept myself busy at the grill, flipping burgers, handing out hot dogs, and checking on the skewers. Guests complimented the food, raising their beers to me. And for a while I felt proud again, like I had pulled off something worth remembering. I smiled, but inside, I couldn't shake the unease. Every now and then, I'd glance across the yard. My wife was moving from group to group, laughing loudly, her smile bright. But what caught my eye most was how often she circled back to the neighbor. They stood together more than seemed natural, leaning close when they talked, laughing at jokes no one else heard. A few times, I saw her hand linger on his arm just a little too long, as though forgetting people were watching. My brother eventually walked over, lowering his voice so no one else could hear. "You see that?" he asked, nodding toward them. I forced a smile and shook my head. "It's nothing," I replied, not wanting to create a scene. But the weight in my chest grew heavier. As the evening went on, the neighbor made himself at home, grabbing beers from the cooler, helping with the food, even offering to carry things for my wife. His confidence in her presence bothered me, but the crowd around us made me feel trapped. I couldn't say anything without looking insecure in front of everyone. So I swallowed my doubts and tried to focus on the laughter, the music, the sight of sparklers glowing in the hands of the children. Outwardly, I was the perfect host. Inside, I was a man quietly losing his peace. I told myself the night would end smoothly, that I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew something was brewing, something that would soon explode in front of us all. As the night stretched on, the barbecue had reached its peak. Plates were stacked high, the cooler was nearly empty, and the conversations had grown louder as the drinks kept flowing. Music played in the background, but it was the voices, the laughter, the teasing, the stories that filled the air with life. For a brief moment, I let myself breathe, thinking maybe my doubts were just paranoia. Maybe the evening would end peacefully after all. But I was wrong. It happened quickly, like lightning on a clear sky. The neighbor, holding his third or maybe fourth beer, stood with a small group by the fire pit. My wife was beside him, her cheeks flushed from laughter, her glass half full. They were surrounded by a mix of friends and neighbors, people chatting casually, when suddenly his voice rose above the rest. He was laughing, leaning back in his chair, and then he said it, words so sharp they silenced the night. "You all should give me credit. I'm not just a neighbor, I'm the guy who got her pregnant." At first, I thought I misheard him. Conversations faltered, then stopped entirely. The sound of a bottle dropping to the ground rang louder than it should have. All eyes turned to him, then to her. My wife froze. Her smile vanished, her face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her silence spoke louder than any denial could. I felt my heart slam against my chest. My ears rang, my throat went dry, and for a moment, it felt like the ground had given way beneath me. My world, the trust, the marriage, the image I had of us, shattered in one drunken boast. People gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others exchanged shocked glances. My brother's jaw tightened as he shot me a look, but I couldn't move. I was nailed to the spot, my hands trembling at my sides. Someone laughed nervously, thinking it was a joke, but the neighbor leaned forward, smirking, his eyes flicking toward me with something between arrogance and pity. "Oh, come on. Don't act so surprised. You all saw it. She's been choosing me for months." The humiliation burned hotter than the fire pit. In front of everyone, friends, neighbors, even family, my wife's betrayal wasn't whispered behind closed doors. It was thrown at me like a weapon, tearing down every shred of pride I had. I turned to her, desperate for her to deny it, to call him a liar. But all she did was lower her head, tears welling in her eyes. That silence was my answer. The yard, once filled with joy, now crackled with tension. No one knew what to say. Guests shuffled awkwardly, some backing away, others staring at me with pity. The children had gone quiet too, sensing the storm that had broken out among the adults. I felt rage rising, raw and unstoppable, but just as strong was a crushing weight of shame. Not just betrayal, but betrayal witnessed by everyone I knew. My marriage wasn't ending in private. It was unraveling under the night sky, with a dozen witnesses holding their breath. The party was over, and so, in many ways, was everything I thought I had. When the neighbors' words hung in the air like smoke, the party unraveled almost instantly. People exchanged awkward looks, murmured half-hearted goodbyes, and quietly slipped out the gate. Plates of half-eaten food were left on tables, drinks abandoned, laughter gone. The same yard that had been full of joy minutes earlier now felt suffocating, heavy with tension. I didn't say much. I couldn't. My body felt numb, my mind a blur. I avoided eye contact with anyone as they left, not wanting to see the pity in their eyes. My brother lingered near me, his hand on my shoulder, but even he said nothing. What words could possibly help? Eventually, even he left, giving me a look that carried more understanding than sympathy. When the last car pulled away, silence consumed the backyard. The music had been shut off, the lights above flickered in the evening breeze, and only the crackle of the dying fire pit remained. My wife stood near the back door, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked small, cornered, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. Inside the house, the confrontation began. She started with excuses. He was drunk. He didn't mean it. He exaggerated. Her voice trembled, but her words were hollow. I stared at her, waiting for a firm denial, for the kind of truth that would prove him wrong. But it never came. Finally, she whispered, "It just happened. I didn't plan it." That sentence shattered what little remained of my restraint. Rage surged through me, not just at her betrayal, but at her casual tone, as if breaking vows, humiliating me, and destroying our marriage was something that just happened. I told her to stop talking. I didn't want to hear excuses, didn't want to picture the nights she chose him over me. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and I felt like the walls were closing in. I left her standing in the living room while I locked myself in the bedroom. For hours, I sat in silence, staring at the floor, replaying every laugh, every whisper, every glance from the barbecue. The betrayal wasn't just real, it was public, and that made it unforgivable. By the next morning, the fallout had already begun. My phone lit up with missed calls and unread messages, dozens of them. Some were from friends who had been at the barbecue, others from relatives who had already heard the story through whispers. The humiliation I had endured in my backyard had now spread beyond those who witnessed it. Word was out, and there was no stopping it. Some friends reached out with genuine concern. "I don't know what to say, man. I'm sorry you had to go through that." One wrote. Another texted, "If you need a place to crash or someone to talk to, I'm here." Their kindness gave me some comfort, but it also reminded me of how public my pain had become. Family responses were harsher. An aunt messaged to say she had never imagined such disgrace would come to our family. A cousin called, his voice filled with both pity and anger, demanding to know what I planned to do. Even my own parents, usually gentle in their words, sounded shaken. "Son," we saw her silence. "We know it's true. Don't let her drag you down with her." What struck me most was the tone of everyone's voices. It wasn't just sympathy, it was disbelief, shock, even secondhand embarrassment. People didn't just feel sorry for me, they felt ashamed for me. That realization cut deep. My wife hadn't only betrayed me privately, she had branded me publicly, to the world around us. I was a man whose neighbor claimed his wife, whose marriage collapsed under the glow of party lights. It was no longer just my heartbreak. It was my reputation, my dignity, my identity, scattered in whispers I could never silence. For 2 days after barbecue, I lived in a fog. I barely spoke, barely ate. I went through the motions of daily life, but inside I was hollow. My wife tiptoed around me, tried to act as though things might return to normal, as though silence could erase what had been exposed. But silence doesn't heal betrayal. It only amplifies it. On the third night, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her to sit down because we needed to talk. Not small talk, not excuses, but the truth. She sat on the couch, hands clasped tightly, her eyes darting toward the floor. I started with the only question that mattered. Is it true? She hesitated, then whispered, yes. The single word cut deeper than 1,000 lies. My chest burned, my throat tightened, and for a moment I thought I might explode. Still, I forced myself to stay calm, though every nerve inside me was screaming. She tried to explain, words tumbling out in half-sentences. I was lonely. You were busy. He was there. It just happened. The same excuses she had offered before, now repeated with tears. But none of it mattered. I told her what I'd been holding back. You didn't just cheat. You humiliated me. You let him brag about you in front of everyone. Do you even understand what that did to me? To us. Her tears flowed harder, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no warmth, no love. The bond between us was gone, broken in a way that couldn't be repaired. She begged for another chance, swearing it was a mistake, promising it would never happen again. But in my heart, I knew the truth. Trust doesn't come back once it's been shattered so completely. And dignity doesn't survive when the world has witnessed its destruction. That was the moment I reached my breaking point. I told her the marriage was over. Whether she stayed in the house or I left, we would no longer live as husband and wife. Her sobs filled the room, but my decision was unshakable. I wasn't walking away out of weakness. I was walking away because I still value myself, even if she never did. After making my decision, a strange calm settled over me. For days, I had lived in turmoil, confused, angry, humiliated. But once I said the word out loud, it's over, I felt lighter, not happy, not healed, but certain. Certainty was something I hadn't felt in a long time. I began taking small steps to move forward. I packed a bag and stayed with my brother for a while. The silence in his spare room felt different from the silence in my house. It wasn't heavy with betrayal. It gave me space to breathe. He didn't press me for details, didn't offer hollow comfort. He just sat with me, shared meals, and reminded me that I wasn't alone. Meanwhile, my wife kept reaching out. Messages, calls, even long emails filled with apologies and promises. But none of it touched me anymore. Every word sounded like desperation, not love. I realized she wasn't fighting for me. She was fighting for herself, for the life she broke and suddenly didn't want to lose. I stayed firm. I told her I would not live in the shadow of her betrayal. The man who stood in front of everyone that night was not the same man now. I refused to be pitted, refused to let her mistake define my worth. It wasn't an easy road. The nights were long, filled with memories I wished I could erase. But each morning I woke up, I reminded myself, I chose dignity over humiliation. I chose respect for myself when she wouldn't give it. And in that choice, I began to find strength again. Looking back now, I realized that the barbecue wasn't just a night my marriage ended. It was the night my eyes were opened. Betrayal cuts deep, but betrayal exposed in front of others leaves a scar that never fully fades. My wife didn't just break our vows. She stripped away my dignity in front of family, friends, and neighbors. That kind of humiliation cannot be undone with tears or apologies. I've learned that love without respect is empty. You can share a home, share memories, even share years together, but if respect is missing, the foundation will eventually crumble. My mistake was ignoring the red flags, convincing myself that trust was enough. Trust is important, yes, but it must be deserved, not blindly given. Walking away was not easy, but it was necessary. I could have stayed, swallowed my pride, and pretended to rebuild, but I knew deep down that I'd never look at her the same way again. Forgiveness might heal small wounds, but some betrayals are too deep, too public, to ever truly recover from. So I chose myself, my dignity, my peace. And if there's one lesson I carry from this nightmare, it's this. Losing someone who disrespects you is not a loss at all. It's freedom.